Imagine buying a home. It has beautifully vaulted ceilings, a private terrace for drinking your morning coffee, and it costs, well, about the same as a starter condo in Ohio.
Which is pretty much the dream, right?
Exactly. But there is a catch, a pretty massive one, actually. Your new home was carved out of solid rock like 9,000 years ago.
Yeah, that is definitely a catch.
And in the 1950s, the government literally sealed it shut because it was deemed a national embarrassment.
It's just such an incredible contradiction, isn't it? I mean, we are looking at a place that completely upends the modern American concept of living.
Right, it really does.
It strips away this endless obsession we have with, constant upgrading and frictionless convenience. Instead, it offers something that's fundamentally older, slower, and built entirely out of stone.
And that is exactly the mission for today's deep dive. We are digging into a stack of sources, primarily this really fascinating relocation guide focused on a hidden corner of southern Italy.
Right, a town called Matera.
Yeah, Matera. It's tucked right into the instep of the Italian boot in the Basilicata region. And usually, travel and relocation content feels like, I don't know, a glossy highlight reel.
Oh, absolutely. Sun-drenched vineyards, perfect cliffs, huge Aperol spritzes.
Exactly. But we are totally skipping that. Think of this as the director's cut. This is for you if you actually want to understand what it takes to build a life somewhere radically different.
Rather than just, taking a photo for your feed.
Right, because the reality of putting down roots in a place like Matera forces you to reconsider what a good life actually looks like on a day-to-day basis.
And to really understand how people are doing that right now, you have to understand the sheer physical reality of the town. The entire story begins and ends with what they call the Sassi.
Which translates to the stones, right?
It does, yeah.
But looking at the photos in the guide, we are not talking about a couple of boulders here. This is an entire settlement carved directly into the sides of two massive limestone gorges.
Right, it's what architects actually call subtractive architecture.
Wait, subtractive architecture?
Yeah, so instead of bringing bricks and building up, early humans found these soft limestone cliffs and just dug inward. They hollowed out the earth to create rooms.
Oh, wow.
And as the centuries went on, the excavated rock was used to build the facade of the next house on top of the one below it.
So it's just stacked on top of itself.
Exactly. It's layered like this labyrinthine beehive. White rooms, arched doorways, tiny windows, all just stacked precariously up the side of a ravine.
And the timeline here is what really breaks my brain.
It is staggering. I mean, archaeologists and historians studying the site believe human beings have lived inside these specific rocks continuously for at least 9 millennia.
9,000 years.
9,000 years, yeah.
So people were sleeping in these caves before the pyramids were even a thought.
Long before. There is virtually no other inhabited place in Europe that can match that sheer, unbroken weight of history.
Which sounds incredibly romantic on paper, like something out of a fantasy novel. But our sources dive into the 20th century history, and I have to admit, it is shocking.
It really shatters that romantic illusion, doesn't it?
Completely. So after World War II, an Italian writer named Carlo Levi published a book called Christ Stopped at Eboli. And he essentially blew the whistle on what was actually happening down in those caves.
He did.
Yeah.
He was exiled to the south for anti-fascist activities. And what he documented in Matera was a level of poverty that was just completely unimaginable to the industrialized north of Italy.
Yeah, and when we say poverty, we are not just talking about a lack of modern plumbing. The descriptions are grim.
Very grim.
You had families of 8 people sharing a single unventilated stone room with their livestock, like mules, pigs, donkeys, just living inside of the family.
Yeah, the original open concept living, I guess.
Right, but the reality was terrible. You had rampant malaria, the infant mortality rates were just devastating.
The conditions were utterly brutal. And when Levi's book gained national and international attention, the Italian government was mortified. I mean, the national parliament officially labeled Matera the shame of Italy.
The shame of Italy. That's heavy.
It was an absolute public relations disaster for a country that was desperately trying to rebuild and modernize after the war.
So what does a government do with a 9,000-year-old PR disaster?
They erase it. Or, well, they try to. In the 1950s, the government enacted this massive forced relocation program. They built new, modern apartment blocks on the flat plateau above the gorge.
And just moved everyone out.
Yeah, they moved approximately 15,000 people out of the Sassi. And then they literally bricked up the doors. They sealed the cave shut so nobody could return.
Wow.
For decades, it was just a ghost city.
And here is where I really struggle to connect the dots. You have this sealed up, abandoned, historically malarial cave system that the whole country is ashamed of.
Right.
Living there sounds damp, dark, and utterly depressing. How on earth does that become the foundation for a luxury European expat haven?
It seems impossible, I know. But that very dark period was actually the crucial mechanism for Matera's future. You have to look at the abandonment not as a destruction, but as an accidental preservation.
Wait, how does sealing something up preserve it? Didn't it just rot?
Well, think about what happened to the rest of Europe during the post-war economic boom of the 1960s and 70s.
Oh, all the new construction.
Exactly. There was a frenzy of rapid, often destructive modernization. Historic neighborhoods were bulldozed to make way for highways, strip malls, concrete apartment towers.
Right.
But by forcibly removing everyone and locking the doors to the Sassi, the government inadvertently protected it from that destructive era. They basically bypassed the wrecking ball. The original ancient infrastructure just sat there, untouched, waiting out the decades.
So if you have a massive, untouched architectural marvel sitting empty, eventually someone is going to get curious and break the seal.
And that is exactly what happened starting in the 1980s. You had this fringe group of artists, bohemian types, and adventurous architects who started venturing back down into the gorge.
Just exploring the abandoned caves.
Yeah. They looked at these raw stone shells and recognized something the government had, an incredible structural potential. They realized that with careful restoration and modern engineering, these caves could be magnificent homes.
And once that initial creator spark happens, the dominoes really start falling.
Yeah.
Because according to our timeline, the global recognition hits fast. By 1993, UNESCO comes in and declares the Sassi a World Heritage Site.
Which is a massive paradigm shift. I mean, the shame of Italy is suddenly recognized as a global treasure.
And then Hollywood shows up, which is always the ultimate megaphone. Mel Gibson shoots The Passion of the Christ there because the raw stone looked more authentically like ancient Jerusalem than modern Jerusalem does.
Right.
Then you get the James Bond film, No Time to Die, opening with this insane motorcycle chase tearing right through those ancient limestone alleyways.
So iconic.
And the ultimate crown, in 2019, Matera was named the European Capital of Culture.
That trajectory from a sealed ghost town to the European capital of culture is just unprecedented.
It is. But let me play devil's advocate for a second here. If you have James Bond doing donuts in your piazza and UNESCO putting you on a plaque, doesn't the town inevitably ruin itself?
What do you mean?
Well, you walk into any major European city with that much hype, and it is usually a nightmare of selfie sticks, cheap souvenirs, and overpriced gelato. It becomes a theme park version of itself. How does Matera avoid just becoming a giant Instagram trap?
That is always the fear with any heritage site. But Matera is protected by something deeper, which is the sociological resilience of southern Italy.
The resilience of the South.
Yeah. The South has a very different rhythm than, say, Florence or Venice. Because it was ignored and marginalized by the wealthier North for so many centuries, the culture developed an incredibly stubborn self-reliance. It does not bend easily to outside influence.
It's almost like the difference between a mirror and a sponge. A tourist-trapped city acts like a mirror, right? It just reflects back whatever the tourists expect to see. They want a cliché pizza parlor. The city builds one.
Right.
But Matera acts like a sponge. It absorbs the visitors into its existing reality, but it doesn't change its internal structure.
That is a brilliant way to look at it. The daily rhythm simply absorbs the influx. During the day, yes, you will see tour groups. But when those buses leave at 6 in the evening, the town does not shut down.
It just goes back to normal.
It reclaims itself. It belongs entirely to the locals who actually live and work in those caves. It is a functional, breathing part of the present.
Okay, let's talk about the physical reality of living in a cave, because I am still hung up on the dampness issue. The relocation guide makes it sound incredibly comfortable.
It is comfortable, mostly thanks to the concept of thermal mass. Those massive limestone walls act as a natural climate control system.
Oh, because the rock is so thick.
Exactly. In the scorching southern Italian summer, the thick rock absorbs the heat, keeping the interior naturally cool and cave-like.
That makes sense.
And then in the winter, that stored heat slowly radiates back into the living space. When you combine that ancient engineering with modern ventilation and radiant floor heating, which most renovated caves have, now you get an incredibly comfortable, sustainable environment.
And then you step outside your climate-controlled cave and you're dropped right into this fierce hyper-localism. I mean, The food culture described in the sources is wild.
It really is.
You walk down to a tiny piazza, you don't get in a massive line for an $8 corporate coffee. You stand at a counter, pay a little over €1 for a flawless espresso, and just chat with the barista.
And that hyperlocalism extends right to the markets. The cornerstone of the lifestyle there is the agricultural output of the Basilicata region. I mean, the guide details the famous pane di Matera.
Oh, the bread.
Yes, the bread.
Yeah.
And it's this massive sculptural loaf, sometimes the size of your forearm, with a dark, thick crust and a bright yellow interior.
Sounds amazing.
It is made from a specific durum wheat that has been cultivated in those hills since the Roman Empire. You pair that with August tomatoes grown 30 minutes away and jars of homemade sauce sold by a local woman out of a basket.
And she does not have a website or a card reader.
No, definitely not.
She just has the best tomato sauce of your life, which sounds amazing. But
Yeah.
you know, if you were sitting in traffic right now, gripping the steering wheel, wondering if you could actually pull this off, there is an elephant in the room.
Okay, what's the elephant?
How does an outsider, specifically an American without deep local roots, actually integrate into a society that is 9,000 years old and fiercely self-contained? I mean, showing up to a tight-knit Italian village sounds socially terrifying.
It would be terrifying in many places, but Matera has a unique historical context that makes it surprisingly welcoming to Americans. To understand why, we have to look at demographic data from the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
Okay.
Between the 1880s and the 1920s, the region of Basilicata experienced a massive wave of emigration.
Right, because of the brutal poverty we talked about earlier, people were fleeing.
Exactly. Hundreds of thousands of locals left those hills and crossed the Atlantic. They became the backbone of the Italian-American diaspora, settling in Brooklyn, New Jersey, the coal mining towns of Pennsylvania, the bakeries of Boston.
Oh, so there is a deep connection there.
Very deep. So the cultural memory of America in Matera is very personal. When an American moves in today, the locals do not view it as a hostile gentrification or a foreign invasion. They actually view it as a homecoming.
That is fascinating. It is essentially a multi-generational cultural boomerang.
A boomerang, yes.
The region exported its own people a century ago out of desperation. They helped build America's infrastructure. And now, a century later, the descendants of that era are bringing their laptops and tech salaries back to the exact same stones.
It is a profound full circle moment. And the locals really appreciate the vitality that this return brings to the town. Based on the relocation data, this incoming wave of expats generally falls into 3 distinct demographic and economic profiles.
And this is where the math gets genuinely hard to believe. So profile number 1 is the early retiree.
Right.
Let's say you dreamed of retiring in Tuscany or Lake Como, but you looked at the real estate prices and realized you'd need a multi-million-dollar portfolio. Matera offers a totally different reality.
The real estate data is super compelling. A fully restored, move-in ready 2-bedroom cave apartment in the Sassi, often with a private terrace overlooking the ravine, currently runs between €150,000 and €250,000.
Which is the price of a small starter condo in a mid-sized U.S. city.
Exactly. And if someone is willing to take on a renovation project and buy a raw stone shell without plumbing or electrical, the entry price drops to a fraction of that.
Then you have profile number 2, the remote worker. And this group is exploding because Italy recently rolled out a dedicated digital nomad visa.
Which is huge.
But a visa doesn't really matter if you can't join a Zoom call from your cave.
Right, and that is the hidden genius of Matera's infrastructure. When they were designated the European Capital of Culture in 2019, a massive influx of funding went into modernization.
So they upgraded the internet.
Oh, big time. They laid fast, incredibly stable fiber optic internet cables directly into the ancient Sassi. You literally have 9,000-year-old walls and gigabit internet speeds.
And the cost of living makes it a financial no-brainer for a remote worker.
The math is striking. When you factor in rent, groceries from the local market, utilities, and eating out multiple times a week, a remote worker's total monthly overhead is comfortably under €1,500.
Wow.
Sometimes closer to €1,000.
So the very poverty and isolation that forced the original inhabitants to flee a century ago is the exact mechanism that created the extreme affordability drawing Americans back today.
It's a wild paradox.
It really is. And it leads to profile number 3, which is the family. We are seeing young families fleeing the specific anxieties of modern American parenting.
Yeah, the crushing cost of daycare, the constant stress of the hyper-competitive culture.
Not to mention the terrifying reality of school shooter drills. They are seeking an entirely different environment for their children.
And in Matera, The concept of a free-range childhood is still a reality. The kids claim the pedestrian-only piazzas after school. They walk to their friends' houses safely.
And there's an expat community there too, right?
There is a surprisingly robust American expat network organizing things like Thanksgiving dinners. But simultaneously, their kids are absorbing native Italian within 6 months. They are essentially buying back their time and their peace of mind.
Okay, I have to throw a wrench in this idyllic picture.
Go for it.
Because whenever you hear about someone running away to a rustic, slow-paced, deeply historic European village, there is a massive catch. If you want to live in a stone cave and buy vegetables from a basket, you usually pay the price in severe isolation.
Right, the middle of nowhere problem.
Yeah, if you break your arm or if you need to fly to Chicago next Tuesday for a family emergency, you are completely doomed because you were trapped at the end of a dirt road. Does embracing this ancient lifestyle mean severing ties with the modern world?
That is the assumption. But Matera completely breaks that rule. And it is the primary reason it is transitioning from a niche destination to a coveted haven.
How so?
It offers a very rare sociological and logistical hybrid. You get the psychological benefits of profound remoteness, the ancient stones, the silence, the slow pacing, but it is built on top of the logistical framework of a well-connected hub.
How does that actually work? Because looking at a map, it looks pretty far down in the south.
It requires looking at how the Italian government strategically invested in southern infrastructure over the last 2 decades. They wanted to combat the brain drain to the north, so they built robust transportation networks.
Okay, so flights aren't an issue.
Not at all. For international connectivity, the Bari International Airport is only an hour away by car or direct shuttle. From Bari, you have inexpensive flights all over Europe, and getting back to the US usually requires just one simple connection through Rome or Munich.
So you are not trapped at all. And physically, you are perfectly positioned. You are 30 minutes from the border of Puglia. You can take a day trip to see the famous cone-roofed houses of El Burabello.
Yep.
You are 2 hours from Lecce, which the architecture guides call the Florence of the South. And if you want the beach, you have easy access to both the Ionian and the Adriatic coasts.
And you mentioned the fear of breaking an arm. Healthcare is often the ultimate deal breaker for expats considering a move abroad. They fear leaving the US system.
Which is funny because the US system is what most people are trying to escape financially.
True. But the data shows Italy consistently ranks as having one of the top-tier healthcare systems globally, prioritized by outcomes.
That's reassuring.
And Matera has its own modern regional hospital right in the city. And for highly specialized care, Bari has a major university teaching hospital just an hour away.
And here's the part that will make anyone paying American healthcare premiums want to cry. Our sources detail the cost of private insurance.
This part is unbelievable.
If you decide you want private coverage on top of the excellent public system to expedite specialist visits, the monthly premium runs between 50 and 90 euros.
Per month?
Yes, 50 to 90 euros a month for full private coverage. Not a copay, the actual premium. It completely eliminates the financial terror of aging or raising a family. You are shielded by a system designed around care rather than profit.
Which goes a long way toward explaining why the people who move there report such a dramatic drop in their baseline stress levels.
And that brings us to the emotional core of this entire deep dive. After unpacking the economics, the thermal mass of the caves, the fiber internet, and the history, the relocation guide ends with this incredibly evocative description of what it actually feels like to be there at the end of the day.
The evening ritual at the Belvedere Overlook.
Yes. Picture yourself standing at this stone railing after dinner. You are looking across the deep ravine at the Sassi. The entire city is lit up with these small, warm lights against the honey-colored limestone.
It's beautiful.
The author notes that it looks less like a city and more like a constellation of stars that fell out of the sky and got stuck against a cliff face.
Wow.
There is no neon buzzing, there is no roar of a highway. You just hear the murmur of voices drifting up from the alleys, maybe the faint sound of a guitar, and you can literally feel the heat releasing from the stones into the cool night air.
That sounds incredible.
And as you stand there, you realize you have been holding this deep, unconscious tension in your shoulders for years, and it finally just melts away.
That psychological release is the true currency of the town. Matera is for those seeking a life that defies the usual superficial cliches. It offers stunning beauty without the pretension, and a heavy, complicated history without any self-pity. It is simply a life that is older, slower, and enduring.
But it leaves us with a fascinating paradox to think about. Matera's survival, the reason those incredible stones were preserved for 9,000 years, relied entirely on its deep isolation and the fact that the modern world turned its back on it. But its current renaissance relies on the exact opposite: fiber optic internet, remote work visas, and global airport connectivity.
It is the ultimate tension of the modern heritage site.
So the question to walk away with is this: can a town genuinely keep its slow, authentic, ancient soul when the rest of the fast-paced world suddenly realizes it holds the exact cure they have been desperately looking for? It is something to chew on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and we will see you next time.